Brandon Sanderson is without a doubt one of the great luminaries of our time when it comes to writing fiction. He's very successful, basically has like a permanent table booked on the New York Times bestseller list, and has already had a massive influence on speculative fiction. He is the father of hard fantasy as we know it today, effectively. And just in general, he's done a lot for the writing world. If you want to write any sort of speculative fiction, I highly recommend that you go look at his lecture series at BYU, which is available fully for free on YouTube. And if you can tolerate unfathomable audio problems that any amateur podcaster should have fixed by episode 2, Writing Excuses, the podcast which he co-hosts, is a staple of the writing world. I mean, I know I'm a little bitch when it comes to, like, audio quality, but bloody hell, man. There's just one teeny tiny problem with Brandon Sanderson's body of work. It just kinda... it feels too much like books. And I don't like that. Now, what the fuck do I mean by this? He's a fiction author. Of course, he's going to write books. I have Mistborn right here, right behind me on the bookshelf, and I don't put books up here that I don't like. Actually, I kind of hated the Metro 2034. It sucks. I really didn't like it. And some of these I haven't read, so that statement was a complete lie. Point is, Mistborn, great series. I enjoyed reading all 3 of them. And also, there's more I haven't read those. They're on my list. They're a very fresh take on fantasy. None of the, like, orc, dwarf, elf shit, which is a classic, I know, and I do respect that. But I need a constant supply of new, fresh, and interesting stuff. My dopamine receptors are as burnt out as a 45-year-old single mother of 2 who's trying to make rent near a good school. World building is so interesting, so high concept, well thought out. There's no baggage to it. Everything that gets introduced in the story, every element of world building, however minor, plays into the story at large. In fact, the world building is so deeply interwoven with the story that you cannot tear the two apart. This entire original world that Sanderson has created exists solely to serve the story. And I fucking hate that. I'm sorry, but it's true. This whole philosophy of world building exists solely to serve the story. I've never been able to get on board with it. I don't agree. As a writer, of course, I found it immensely interesting to see the amount of skill and craftsmanship that went into making these. The story beats tick like clockwork, but that's just what it is. It's a ship in a bottle. It's a gorgeous snow globe that ultimately is self-contained and serves the sole purpose of justifying its own aesthetics. And as a result, it just doesn't feel real to me. I don't at any point think that there is a real place out there that could be Mistbornia, which lives and breathes and has its own little things that happen in it all of the time. The entire world, during the process of reading the series, felt like a set. I've never been able to immerse myself in theater plays. Not only is all of the emotion and the melodrama amped up to 11, which of course you have to do, because otherwise the people in the last row are not going to be able to detect the small nuances of your facial expression, but also, you know, there would be like red crepe paper that they would use to simulate flames, or they'd be on a boat and there'd be like guys in dark clothing moving pieces of wood around that are like painted blue and cut out to be shaped like waves. It's always very clear that what is happening here is a story. It is an abstraction of something that may or may not have happened. It is not a window into that world, but it is a retelling of something that is self-contained and neat. Whatever context this was ripped from and adapted to this retelling type format, nothing that I see exists for no other reason than because it exists. Something that historically accurate or, you know, accurate-ish type films and shows often get criticized for is that they have too many characters and the things that happen are too complicated. Things just kind of happen, and the way that they happen is not always satisfying. You don't understand everything that's going on screen, because not everything is always meant to be understood by everyone. I mean, imagine like living a whole day of your life fully understanding everything that's happening. That would be weird. And a lot of people are involved in making history, and history is not always satisfying. I like these kinds of films and series even if they're not entirely historically accurate, or they're, just period pieces of things that could have happened, because they make me feel like I'm watching real people going through real lives. The story and world building are not a self-contained system. They exist as part of a larger patchwork of stories that make up a reality that exists independent of this particular story. I mean, they're historical films and, shows that the real world is a real place, after all. In Mistborn, and also, pretty much all of the other works that follow this very strict Chekhov's world-building type philosophy, sometimes they mention the existence of a larger world, but you can be sure that, something is going to happen that makes that foreshadowing in retrospect. And whenever somebody goes somewhere, that piece of the world becomes real because the main characters need it for the plot. It doesn't feel like it's real outside of that. Nothing exists just because it exists, which ironically is the reason why most things in the real world exist. There's a lot of interesting world building, but there's not any interesting world building that's just completely inconsequential. And this lack of loose ends, open wounds, unthreaded pieces of string on the rope, which I guess also that's loose ends, it makes the world just feel not real to me. I don't believe it's real, thus I don't get fully immersed in it, thus I don't engage with it as passionately as I might have. Again, as a fellow author, when I engage with Brandon Sanderson's books, what I see is me being a fellow clockmaker who is admiring the precision with which this master of the craft has created this particular piece of technology. But I'm admiring the way that he plies his trade. I'm not getting lost in the intricacies of the mechanism. A lot of the time, a big reason for this is that the author and or the audience are in love with the medium, like for instance books, or maybe even the written word itself. Just like a Wes Anderson film makes no attempt at hiding the fact that it is a film. I personally do not share this love for the medium. My canvas is not the ink on the page, but the imagination of the reader. But I also know that Brandon Sanderson espouses the same kind of windowpane prose that I also prefer, and he does it very well. It's an immersive style of writing. It's just the fact that all the edges are so diligently filed off. It just does nothing to make the world feel less sterile. And of course, Mistborn is epic fantasy. I think pretty much all of Sanderson's works is epic fantasy. And in epic fantasy, it's about saving the world, so the world-building mysteries are gonna get solved. But all of them? Fully? None get, left by the wayside? I'm not saying, of course, by any means that there's anything wrong with writing fiction like that. A lot of people seem to enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed the books for the most part. All of the bits that are good on them are very, very good. But then I see all these people just obsessively polishing away the bits and bobs of their world building, turning it into this perfect sphere of a snow globe. Oh, why is this here in the world? What purpose does it serve? It's here because it's here. That's the reason. Its purpose is to make the world not feel like a set. I think sometimes, especially in our hyper-commercialized capitalist world, where everyone is always trying to figure out the best and ideal way to make the most amount of money, that a lot of the trends and the philosophies that are espoused as the right way of doing things can be sustained through the groupthink of experts wanting to make sense of phenomena that by the nature of their sheer complexity defy understanding. But of course, if it's my job to tell you how to write good, and I admit that I don't know everything about how to write good, I'm out of a job because there's gonna be someone who lies about it and says that they do know everything. Which also, again, just to make this clear, I don't think that this is something Brandon Sanderson is doing. I don't think he's like a cynical capitalist. I've never seen him, heard him pretend that he is all-knowing or anything, but it is a trend that I have observed with people who, like, espouse the philosophy of writing that he has created. The man, he seems like an alright bloke. He just found an interesting way, a new way to write good books. That's become his style. And now there's a few people who just religiously try to emulate him. And I personally just don't prefer it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. And in that spirit, because it's relevant to the video, yes, I do have a novel that I'm trying to get published. So probably in like 10 years, maybe you will see it on some shelf. And see you around, cunts.